I keep my phone in the kitchen, face down on the little oil-stained placemat by the microwave between the salt shaker and the coupon book I still clip from out of habit. It's an old iPhone 12 with a cracked corner. I like it because it still has a home button feel in my mind, even though it doesn't. Familiar enough. Predictable. That's how I prefer my life at 72. A sturdy routine, a coffee pot that coughs and hisses at 6:10 a.m., and exactly 2 slices of rye toast with too much butter. On Wednesday, April 17th, my son, Evan, stopped by to check on me. That's how he says it, like he's a charitable organization. He wore a slate hoodie and those expensive white sneakers that never touch a puddle. He brought pepperoni pizza in a greasy box and plunked it down on my laminate table, as if pizza is proof of love. "Hey, Dad," he said, peering into the fridge like an inspector. "You need anything? Your milk's out of date." "My milk expires tomorrow," I said. "Just like your promises." He winked, always with the jokes. Evan is 36, an expert in everything and accountable for nothing. A digital consultant, which, near as I can tell, means he moves money from screen to screen and calls it value. Years back, when he was still made of softer clay, I paid $58,000 to float his cafe idea. We got 10 months of playlists and latte art before the bang came for machines. I paid $32,000 for the wedding because he wanted string lights and a barn 40 miles away. He needed $19,400 for medical bills that never produced a receipt and a dozen little dad, spot me till Friday requests that blended into one long, humiliating Friday. He cut a slice. Grease bled through the paper plate. "Phone acting slow?" he asked, glancing at my iPhone with a casualness that wasn't casual at all. "There are some updates you should have. Security stuff. I can install them if you want." I wiped crumbs with the side of my hand and said nothing. He's been trying to turn me into a problem to solve since Eleanor died. You can do that with a widow or a widower. Just speak confidently and wait until grief makes them compliant. I made a sound in my throat that could pass for consent. "Cool," he said, already reaching. "Let me just Face ID, awesome." He tilted the phone to my face while I chewed. "This will fix the lag." He moved to the counter. That put him under the Ring camera on the front hallway, angled toward the kitchen. It's a cheap little thing Gina from across the street helped me mount so I could watch for packages. The motion alert chirped on my TV. Evan palmed my phone as if it were his. He leaned between the microwave and Keurig, his body blocking my view of the screen. "You still using the bank app?" he asked. "I use the teller with a pulse," I said. He smiled like I'd told a quaint joke. Yeah. But you do have your debit connected here, right?" Tap, tap. I'm cleaning up the settings. These old OS bugs, you know how it is. I don't know much about iOS, but I know men and I know money. His voice did that thing it does when he sees an opportunity. It goes low and soothing, like a singer in a dark bar. He asked about two-factor authentication as if it were a crossword clue. He told me about passkeys and device trust. He asked for the 6-digit code the bank texted, waving away my questions. "It's part of device health," he said. "Otherwise, you get locked out." Grease cold, pizza half-eaten, I watched his hands. Long fingers. Eleanor used to say he had a pea in his hands. I watched those pea in his hands dance across my phone, then my email, then something called Authenticator. He unified my messaging. He consolidated notifications. He disabled SMS because it's less secure, which also disabled my habit of reading the little bank texts after dinner. He left at 9:43 p.m. after he'd cleaned up storage and enabled the good stuff. He hugged me at the door and told me to call if the coffee maker makes it wheeze again. At 8:07 the next morning, my landline rang. Real bell. Real ring. I wiped toast crumbs from my hands and answered. "Mr. Hargrove? This is Sharon from First Shore Bank's fraud team. We're calling to verify some activity." Her voice had that careful brightness banks train into people. "Go ahead," I said, reaching for a pen that didn't work and then one that did. "Yesterday evening, 6 external transfers were initiated from your checking ending in 4407 between 10:42 p.m. and 1:15 a.m. I'm going to read out the amounts. Please tell me if you recognize any. $17,500 to Lone Star Ventures LLC, $19,900 to North Point Advisory, $24,500 to Rivelin Tax Partners, $32,000 to Blue Fairy Digital, $60,000 to Baycoin Exchange, and $8,400 to Sandview Rentals. I looked at the microwave clock. 8:08. My coffee turned metallic in my mouth. I didn't say anything for a beat, then I said it twice, to be sure. I did not make those transfers. Understood, she said softly. We flagged them because they deviated from your typical pattern and because the device fingerprint changed. The what changed? The login device. A new device authenticated at 9:17 p.m., an iPhone associated with your credentials. The IP address geolocated to your residence. I was home, I said. My son was visiting. Silence, respectful and loaded. Sir, I'm sorry. We could put a hold on pending ACH items. The problem is 3 are wire transfers, immediate settlement. I can initiate recalls with the receiving banks, but wires are not guaranteed to be recoverable. How much is wires? 52, 32, and 19.9. She exhaled, maybe because we were both calculating. $104, 900, and the rest. ACH debits. We can put an administrative hold and file regulation claims. The $60,000 to Baycoin is a tricky one. It was an account to exchange purchase flagged as instant buy, which sometimes routes like a debit card transaction. I held the phone against my chest and stared at Eleanor's photo on the fridge. We'd taken on Lake Erie, her hair catching the wind. Okay, I told Sharon. Lock the online banking. Remove all external payees. Freeze the debit card. I'll be there at 10 with my driver's license and a list of names. Mr. Hargrove, she said gentler now, do you feel safe? I looked at my little kitchen with the cheerful rooster clock and the stack of mail that never stops. I do, I said, and I feel old and stupid and angry, but none of that is your department. I'm putting a senior account flag for extra verification, she said. We'll have affidavits ready. If you can bring your phone, we'll document the device details. When I hung up, the kitchen felt smaller. I opened the bread box, not to get bread, but to breathe in a place that had held bread and thus remembered good things. Then I pulled my chair back to the counter and set the iPhone down like a patient. I know how to use a wrench. I know how to take apart a Briggs & Stratton engine, lay the pieces out on a towel, and put it back together so it purrs. A phone is just a small engine with prettier parts. I opened settings and took my time. Passwords and security. There it was, new sign-in from iPhone, this device. Approved 9:17 p.m. Recovery, keys I never set. Backup codes, 2 of them used for remaining. Authenticator installed at 9:11 p.m. Mail forwarding toggled to an address I didn't recognize for security copies. In messages, SMS forwarding to Evan's MacBook Pro, unchecked now. In the bank app, external transfers enabled. New payees with friendly names, LSV, NPA, RTP. Under devices, a Mac in Evan's office had login approved status. I took photographs of every single screen. The habit of documenting is a good habit. It saved better men than me. Then I opened my Ring app and scroll back. At 9:17 p.m., there he was on my hallway camera, half in frame. My son, chin down, phone angled between the microwave and the Keurig, his thumb quick, his eyes narrow. I took that recording and copied it twice. Evidence is shy when you chase it. Better to bottle it while it's still in the room. In my life, I've learned, sometimes the surest path to justice is to collect every scrap in a folder before you say a word. I've seen that trick done by people smarter than me, who knew to keep quiet until the proof could speak on its own. Then when the moment came, they laid it out like a prosecutor at kitchen table, and the truth had nowhere left to hide. I'll tell you, there's a special kind of calm that comes with that plan. At 10:02, I pushed open the glass door at First Shore Bank. It chimes with a pleasant ding, like a clean conscience. Sharon wore a navy blazer and kind eyes behind square glasses. She shook my hand like I was a man, not a problem. We signed the affidavits. I described Wednesday night in simple words. She printed me a list of receiving banks and account numbers. For the wires, she said, I'm submitting recall requests to Florida National and Lone Star Mutual. We also have a fraud-to-fraud hotline we can use to flag Baycoin's compliance team. Flag it with a nail gun, I said. She hid a smile. We see a lot of this, she said. It's worse when it's family. It's always family. I felt the bitterness like a pill I couldn't swallow. We spent an hour freezing, unlinking, removing, and reissuing. She called the exchange and filed a fraud ticket. She printed a device details sheet showing the authorization codes and the IP address. A Ziply fiber line that ends at my house. I'm going to give you Detective Morrison's card, she said. He runs our county's elder financial unit with the DA. Normally I'd wait, but the amount's here and the overnight pattern. I'll call him, I said. But first I'm going to call my son. Mr. Hargrove, she said carefully, if you decide to talk to him, consider recording it. In our experience, people say a lot when they think it's just a family matter. I was a machinist 40 years, I said. I learned how to listen while men talked themselves into holes. I made lunch the way Eleanor taught me to make peace. Tomato soup with milk Whiston, so it's creamy, and a grilled cheese cooked low and patient. I took 2 bites, then dialed Evan on speaker and opened the voice memos app. He answered with his salesman voice. Dad, how's the phone after the updates? Good, I said. Also, the bank called. 6 transfers last night. They want to know if you enjoyed your little field trip. The air went tight. He recovered quickly. Whoa. That's a big accusation. Maybe your account was hacked. It was, I said, by a man in a slate hoodie who thinks fingerprints don't stick to screens. Dad, he said, trying offended now. You're stressed. Let me come over and we'll look at it together. There are scams. Your MacBook is my text messages, I said. You disabled SMS on my phone and put in an authenticator, which you installed. You added new payees and renamed them. You disabled my alerts. You authenticated your device at 9:17 p.m. while you were bent over my counter. My Ring camera loves your profile. Sharon says wires aren't guaranteed back. That was a dumb choice if you wanted the money to boomerang. He breathed out an ugly sound. Okay, he said. Fine. I'll move some funds. I'll fix it. Monday. I'll move it back Monday. I just needed to cover a short position that was going to liquidate. It was temporary. You weren't going to use that much this week, right? You took $162,300, I said, letting the numbers sit between us like stones. Temporary is for umbrellas, not theft. Don't use words like that, he snapped. It's family. You helped with the cafe. You covered the wedding. You've always said what's yours is mine one day. One day, I said softly. Not Wednesday. He switched to his righteous voice. You're my father. I'm your son. Who else am I supposed to go to? Do you want me to fail? I want you to stop failing on purpose, I said. Listen carefully. At 4 o'clock Saturday, we'll be at Lucky Lane's for Max's birthday. You will bring my phone passwords, your devices, and a cashier's check for everything still in your control. And while we roll a ball at some helpless pins, a man named Travis will hand you papers. What papers? Papers that explain the price of stealing from the old man who paid for your prom suit. He laughed a short, barked laugh that didn't sound brave. You wouldn't. Son, I said. You have no idea what I would do when I'm done being polite. Detective Morrison called me back at 1:52 p.m. You can tell when a cop has seen too much by how he waits between words. I sent him the Ring video, screenshots, and Sharon's device sheet. By 3:30, he had a warrant in motion for device records for my carrier and, pending the DA's nod, a preservation letter to Baycoin. We'll try to get their compliance side to freeze any holdings tied to those incoming ACHs, he said. The wires, he sighed. We'll push for calls, but you know how that goes. I do, I said. I've been around long enough to watch men pretend a refund is justice. He asked me if I wanted to press charges. He's your son, he said gently, putting the word between us like a glass you can see through. Some dads, if I let him do this to me, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. I'm teaching him to do it to someone who doesn't have a Sharon. Understood, he said. We'll be quiet until Lucky Lanes. You sure you want a public scene? I want exactly one public scene, I said. Humiliation is the only language his pride speaks. He coughed a laugh. We'll keep it tidy. I called Linda Ramos, my attorney, who handled the living trust one set up after Eleanor passed. Linda is 5 feet of law and a mouth you don't step in front of. I explained quickly, then slower where it mattered. She pulled the trust off a shelf and ran her finger along the page that said what happened if a beneficiary attempted fraud, coercion, exploitation, or theft against the grantor. The disinheritance clause has teeth, she said. We can amend the side letter today and email a copy to your bank. Have them treat any attempts under that name as high risk. Do it, I said, and prepare a civil complaint for conversion, identity theft, and elder financial exploitation. We'll serve it on Saturday. Max's birthday? She asked, and I heard the smile in her voice. Lucky Lane's, I said. He can aim for the 10-pin while someone underpaid in a suit hands him my quiet rage. Lucky Lane smells like fried things and 12 kinds of detergent that never quite win. On Saturdays, it's an orchestra of thuds and shouts and gutterballs. I wore my good shoes and brought 2 manila folders, one labeled Proof and the other labeled Mercy. At 4:06, as we sang to Max over a chocolate cake shaped like a dinosaur, a stocky man with a tight tie, Travis, walked toward our lane holding a clipboard. He checked a face, checked his papers, then called my son's name. Evan blinked like a deer in a bright kitchen. Evan Hargrove, Travis said. For you. He held out a legal envelope. A second man, in a plain jacket, stood 10 feet away with his hands in his pockets. Detective Morrison, stripped of titles to make everyone comfortable. What is this? Evan asked, already angry because anger feels like control. Dad, seriously? It's a complaint, I said, and a temporary restraining order regarding my accounts and devices, and a notice to preserve all digital evidence in your possession. The room narrowed. The bowling balls sounded very far away. You're doing this at my son's party? Evan's wife, Jenna, looked at me with the kind of hatred that's mostly fear's shadow. This is monstrous. It's Thursday, I said calmly. The bank called at 8:07. He had all day to bring back the phone and the money. He promised me Monday. The problem is, it wasn't his to promise. Evan ripped the envelope open. Pages slid out like white birds with bad news. He read, There's a way a man's face changes when he sees his name next to words that stick. This is insane, he said louder. 2 lanes down, a kid looked over and giggled at the adult tantrum. I can fix it. I told him I'd fix it. That's right, I said. On Monday. But you started stealing on Wednesday. I gave you 15 months of benefit of the doubt. I covered your cafe, your wedding, your braces, your bad ideas. Thursday, I gave you the mercy of letting your son blow out his candles. Friday, today, I called a detective. Saturday, I brought papers. That's the new schedule. Detective Morrison stepped forward just enough to be seen. Mr. Hargrove, he said to me with a nod that said he had my back. Mind if we chat with your son privately about some device access logs? No cuffs, just a conversation. Evan's eyes flicked from me to Morrison to Travis to the phone in his own hand. He made a choice men like him always make. They doubled down. You can't prove it, he said. We were at Dad's. The IP and the device, they'll show it was his phone. He approved everything. The bank's device sheet shows an authenticator app added at 9:11 p.m., I said, producing a copy from the proof folder. My texts were forwarded to your Mac. You disabled SMS. You added your Mac as a trusted device. My Ring camera caught you at 9:17 p.m. aligning the phone so Face ID would trigger. The bank saw a new device, and so did Apple. That's called a trail. Evan, Jenna whispered, panic nibbling her edges. Just give it back. Give him the money back. I can fix it, he repeated, tinny now. Go ahead, Detective Morrison said. Fix it by opening your phone and handing it to me. Or fix it by explaining why Baycoin's compliance team just froze an account ending in 2248 tied to an inbound ACH for $60,000. Evan's chin trembled. He tried a final card. Anger at me. You're doing this to your own child. Son, I said, you did this to someone's father. He swore low, useless words. Morrison nodded. Okay, he said, friendly as a barber. Let's step outside where the birthday boy doesn't have to hear adults talk about federal crimes. Outside, the April wind cut through his hoodie. He hugged himself, then remembered he was supposed to look unbothered. He handed over the phone. He said, I want a lawyer, because the internet told him that line makes the wolves back off. Detective Morrison smiled politely and backed off. Tomorrow, Morrison said to me on the side, the DA's intake will look at elder exploitation and identity theft. Given your paperwork, I expect restitution to be a condition of any deal. Baycoin is holding. One of the receiving banks already bounced a recall on the 19-9. We'll fight on the others. Wires are stubborn, I said. Pride's worse, he said. Jenna walked out holding the dinosaur cake, as if something about that felt normal. You had to do this here, she hissed at me. He promised. He promised Monday, I said. The money moved Wednesday night. Max looked up from the icing smeared on his face and smiled. A fearless boy who still thinks adults are mostly good. I bent to his level. Happy birthday, champ, I said. You ever see a strike? Watch this. I took his ball, neon green, rolled it with 2 fingers, and sent 10 white pins scattering like scared teeth. The law is slow like a careful old man. And then, when papers are in order, it moves fast. On Monday, Evan's office was visited by a detective with a polite face and a flash drive. On Tuesday, Baycoin sent a letter with big words and a small mercy. Funds frozen, pending investigation. On Wednesday, Lone Star and North Point responded to recall requests with a pair of "we regret to inform you," which is the polite form of no on Thursday. I sat in the DA's office and repeated 3 sentences that mattered more than my shame. By Friday, Linda, my lawyer, had filed an amended trust schedule. Evan's name removed. Max's 529 increased. Jenna offered a conditional stipend if she kept finances separate, which is how you introduce a young mother to boundaries that can save her life. The first hearing was short. Evan wore his only suit and a neck full of vanity. He hadn't had time to shave. The judge wasn't cruel. He was bored, which is worse for men who think they're special. He said words about protected adults and fiduciary duties owed by family members and temporary orders. And then he stamped something that made Evan blink again. In the hallway, Linda put a hand on my elbow. We'll get some of it back, she said. Not all, but some. I know, I said. Money's not the only thing that leaves and doesn't come home. At the second hearing, Evan took a deal. No jail, at least not that week. Restitution under a schedule that would humiliate a man who used to grin over expensive sneakers. Community service with the same old men he thought were marks. A class about elder abuse where they will play a video with music that tries too hard. He came to my house once to apologize. He knocked like the police and looked smaller when I opened the door. Dad, he said. I'm sorry. I know, I said. I panicked, he said. I had a position. If I didn't cover. Look, it's complicated. It's very simple, I said. You used my face to rob me. He blinked at that, because you don't expect poetry from the man who checks if the furnace is making a new noise. You disinherited me, he said, as if that was the true wound and the wires were confetti. I protected what your mother built, I said, and watched a little pain flicker across his face at her name. I protected your son's college from your vanity. He looked past me into my house and saw the same couch he's seen since he was 10. Can I come in? He asked. No, I said. You can come back when the balance on the docket next to your name says 0 and the bank manager doesn't flinch when she reads it. He nodded. It was a nod that a boy uses when the teacher finally tells him the rules won't change no matter how he looks at her. He walked back down my front steps like the world was heavier. When the door closed, I went to the kitchen and poured coffee that hissed and coughed and then filled the room with a smell that belonged to me. I set my phone face down where it always lies. I turned off the Ring camera because the house felt safe and the past was done watching me. Sharon called 2 weeks later. Good news, Mr. Hargrove, she said. Baycoin released 37 of the 60. They flagged the account with the receiving exchange and clawed back a chunk. 1 ACH returned fully. The 19-9 is still out, but the restitution order should cover it. Thank you, I said. You were a gift the morning after a bad night. She laughed softly. It's my job, she said, but I'm glad we got you some of it. Sharon, I said, can I set a note on the account? Of course. Make it say, do not approve any device changes without Mr. Hargrove present, wearing his red Browns cap. She chuckled. I'll put that in the system. I ate rye toast that morning with too much butter and didn't apologize to my arteries. I wrote a check to Max's 529 and signed it with the neat, slow hand of a man who still believes in paper. Then I clean my Keurig's needle with a paperclip because it pulls better when you take care of the tiny holes that clog without asking permission. Before lunch, I opened the Mercy folder and took out the letter I'd written Jenna. It was 2 lines long. I will help Max. I will help you if your accounts are yours alone. Choose your life like a mother, not a team. I slid it into an envelope, stamped it, and put it by the door. At sunset, I sat in Eleanor's chair and watched the light turn my living room into a photograph of a life that always tried to be decent. My phone buzzed, Detective Morrison's number. "Just so you know," he said, "your son's doing his shifts at the senior center without complaint. Maybe the lecture landed." "Maybe," I said. "Some of them learn," he said. "Some of them don't." "I know," I said. "I did too many years raising a boy who thought bills were ideas." We said goodbye, and I set the phone down where it belongs. Men like Evan think theft is a keyboard trick, a way to move digits faster than consequences. They forget old men know about levers and gears, when to apply pressure, and how to stop a machine before it throws a belt and kills someone. They forget that every system has a switch somewhere that says off. I didn't raise a thief. I raised a boy who mistook my love for a blank check. That's not the same thing. But the distance between them is measured in dollars I no longer owe him, and in one beautiful thing I do. The next morning, I brewed coffee, signed my monthly donation to the food bank that fed my father in 1959, and wore my Red Browns cap to the bank to say hello to Sharon. She waved me over like an old friend. On my way out, I held the door for a young man who smelled like cologne and ambition. He nodded without seeing me. "That's fine. I've got no reason to be seen anymore. Everything that needs saying has been said, written down, notarized, and filed." Evan texted at noon, doing the hours. "Max asked about you. He wants to bowl again." I typed slow, thought long, and sent. "When you're done paying back the last dollar, we'll roll frame. I'll show him how to pick up a 10-pin. I put the phone down, face down on its placemat, and smiled. No updates needed. I don't know if Evan will learn the right lesson. I do know that he learned this much. If you take an old man's phone with the promise to install updates, you'd better be prepared for the update you can't undo me. And that, son, is the kind of fix you can't push to Monday.